Okay, welcome back. In this segment, I want to talk about some of the signs of termites. Maybe you don't actually see the termite directly, but maybe there's some signs that a problem might still exist. One of those signs, for example, if you have a swarm of winged insects, those could be termites. Maybe you'll see the wings left behind. That could be an indication that perhaps you've got termites and maybe you should call that exterminator. If you see cracked or bubbling paint, and this is important because, as I mentioned, one of my stories, for example, is that we actually had swallows getting in through the, this home was built about 1960, and it had the gable vent, which is the vent in the side of the house. And that vent was big enough that swallows could get in, and they had been doing that for years. So now you've got a couple hundred swallows that are actually living in the attic of this space. Their urine was going down the attic and down that exterior wall beneath the gable vent, and the urine was getting that wall wet enough continuously to actually support a termite colony. So I was called out there actually to identify whether we had mold there, and I'm sure we did have mold that was feeding on the wetness from the urine, but we also had termites. I was able to determine that because I ran my finger across the paint and I would actually hear squealing. And the squealing came from the termite workers and or soldiers that were behind the paint that were being pinched. And it was actually, you could hear that. I thought that was pretty cool. So what they were doing, to be clear, they were eating the paper on the sheetrock that was between the gypsum and the paint. And so again, as I was running my hand down there, I was squashing them, and they didn't appreciate me for doing that. So that is one sign that you have at least a termite history and perhaps an active colony. If you see hollow wood, if you see the wood that has been eaten between the rings, that is going to be the easiest wood for a termite to eat. So that's one way of identifying that you've got that sort of a problem. I once had somebody ask me the difference between dry rot and termites, and the answer is that dry rot is going to basically be the edge where the termites are going to be more through especially the spaces between the rings. And you're going to have what's called frass, which is their poop that is there inside the 2x4 or whatever it is that the termites are chewing on. You're going to have the mud tubes, you've got the discarded wings, you've got the frass, and one thing that you can also do, let's say that maybe we have a piece of wet wood and maybe it's a 2x4 and you're wondering if perhaps the termites are actually inside that wet wood. If you've got a solid piece of wet wood and you rap on it with maybe a hammer or a screwdriver or whatever, if it's solid, you're going to hear a solid sound. If it's been chewed away, then you're going to hear a very, much more of a hollow, drum-like, empty sound. So that's how to determine, besides the mud tubes, of course, which becomes obvious, that's how to determine if you've got an active or a historical termite colony. Next section, we're going to talk about how to address that. Be right back.